Good morning and welcome to Talking Baseball Australia Live. My name is Dan Vaughan. My broadcast partner Paul Morgan's waiting in the wings for you. Good morning. Time to talk a little baseball. It's Brecky and baseball here on Talking Baseball Australia. Let's cue that open in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Show is on the air.
It's Talking Baseball Australia. It's baseball updates you'll really love. The MLB and ABL news you want. With Paul Morgan and Dan Vaughan. It's baseball's best mate all year round. From the batter's box to the mound.
Well, good morning to you, and welcome to Talking Baseball Australia Live. My broadcast partner, Paul Morgan, is going to be joining me. I'll bring his mic up, and we're also got our guests coming up in just a moment as well. Going to bring that to you. Good morning, mate. How you doing? Can you hear me? All good in the West?
It's all good in the West, DV. Spring is in the air, and baseball season's around the corner, I suppose. So it's all well. Hopefully, baseball season's around the corner. So it's all, and NFL's about to kick off as well. So, well, what a time to be alive, DV.
Yes, it's a good time. Got all kinds of sport going on. The link here, I'm actually going to put the link up on the screen just real quick because we got Adam Dodd from Sydney going to be joining us in a moment, and I'm going to put the link on the screen for him. We're having a little trouble getting him live here, but he's going to join us off the top of the show as we start a couple minutes early. Adam, if you can see this, there's your link right there. Yeah, just go to the link and we will get you on, my friend. But waiting for him to, as soon as we get the word that he's there, we're going to go ahead and bring him on. Before we get to going too long, let's go ahead and tell you what's on the show. I mentioned Adam Dodd, CEO of the Sydney Blue Sox. He's going to be our headliner and going to get right into what's been a pretty busy time for him. Got some good questions from the league as well for him to dive into from Paul and I. Also, we're going to catch up on what's been a busy. These waves keep coming to us, don't they? I mean, you think, oh, it's going to be a quiet week. Here comes more stuff. You got Unsworth, big story there. Boom, here comes New Zealand with 5 more names. It's just a wave of things going on. Players being signed, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the Indy alums as well, making some news. Also, Liam Hendricks. What's he do? Just gets an ESPN, the magazine, and just keeps getting better and better, notching saves left and right. And of course, your questions and comments throughout the show, we got them for you right here as we wait for. Let's see here, Paulie. I'm just actually checking here as I. Let's see here.
But I just say, Dan, one of the bigger weeks in the ABL. I mean, and that was the thing that struck me so much this week. It was started off with Dylan Unsworth, which was I think very much unexpected for you and I, and for a lot of people, particularly out west. I think a lot of people thought that that number one pitcher would be locked down for another season in the West, and then the Tuatara come along, sign some players. Melbourne announced a couple of players. Glass now as well. The Tuatara get the Adelaide Giants steal one from Auckland. So big week, but not as big as the Sydney Blue Sox, DV.
No, they've had a busy week or two. Their headlining's worldwide, and Adam Dodd, the CEO of the Sydney Blue Sox, kind of have to take he's busy. Appreciate your time, Adam. How you doing, mate?
G'day, mate. How you going?
Good, man. I'm rocking and rolling. Probably not as excited as you are. Your ball club not only making national headlines in Australia, but you're making worldwide headlines in North America and any place else that follows baseball. I got to ask you off the top, how busy has it been for you with this whole Manny thing? You obviously, Manny Ramirez has created quite a bit of a stir. You've been pretty busy.
Yeah, look, mate, September, Octobers tend to be our busiest time of year anyway. Throw in the worldwide Manny news and everything else that's going on with opportunities around the world for players. Mate, as I said to you this morning, I can't even get into my office today to have this chat. I'm on the road, I'm moving. It's all good, mate. I love it, so no complaints.
Adam, how did Manny?
Go ahead, Paul. Sorry,
I was just going to say, Adam, how did Manny come about? Was that they reached out to you? You sort of reached out somewhere, and how did it all sort of? And then, of course, you have news that you pay 10 times the amount of money, which is probably not exactly accurate. But how did it all come about to him landing at Blue Sox Nation?
Yeah, the whole positive mindset just went the opposite way when you mentioned that report. Yeah, look, good question, Paul. Mate, as a Red Sox fan, I was excited when Tuatara announced that they'd signed Manny, and great for our game, and I'd probably get to watch him once or twice this year, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, a few days later, our organisation, through one of our other emails to our GM, asks if we're interested in Manny, and I get forwarded the email, and I'm like, "Are we interested?" So it just started from there, mate. So it turns out he hadn't signed, and look, the publicity was good in Auckland, and then coincidentally the other day the 10 times story comes out. Ironically, it's on the same day that Auckland lose their star pitcher to another club. So let's have a smoke and mirrors exercise here. But mate, look, I love Auckland. I love what they're doing on media-wise. But yeah, mate, Auckland didn't offer Manny a cent, didn't get that far in negotiation. So how can I offer 10 times more? We haven't paid a huge amount of money for Manny. I give you that. I give you that much, mate.
I think what's good about this, Adam, regardless of people are talking. I mean, we want people to talk about our game in Australia. Fans are talking, teams are talking. That creates buzz. That's something this league needs, a huge shot in the arm. Are you kind of thinking the same thing, that, hey, this is good for the league?
Oh, mate. Do I think we've signed 2004 Manny? Absolutely not. Can he still swing it? Yes, he can. He jumped on a Zoom call with a couple of our players the other night that have already signed, and we had a great 2 hours on the phone. It was, he was letting us know what he's doing to keep in shape, and he hits every day, and he's been down to Miami hidden facilities. This guy's getting busy and ready, but yeah, he is. He's 48. He's not going to be as agile as he was at 25, but we didn't sign Manny to hit 3 in our lineup and be the DH that wins us a Claxton Shield. This is great for our game. It's great for the Sydney Blue Sox. Mate, and he won't. He could hit average of 100 with 1 home run for the year, and it's a successful year for us. The noise, the attention, the merch it'll create, the publicity for the Australian Baseball League and Sydney alone is huge. Other teams are already appreciative at their corporate sales uptake because Manny's coming to town. There is nothing negative about this, but I'm learning quickly, mate. You just can't please everyone.
Certainly can't. But Adam, one of the things I love you guys did straight away was you got the Ramirez jerseys out there, got the fans to buy them. How did that go? Was that you getting orders mainly in Sydney or all around the country, around the world? People are pretty happy to buy some Manny gear.
Yeah, mate. Look, it was a great uptake. That's the most jerseys we've sold in 4 days. I would say, as someone asked me last night, the best way to explain it is it's probably 60% out of New South Wales, 20% around the country, and 20% out of the US.
Wow, that's impressive. It reminds me a little bit. Now, granted, back in my early days when Michael Jordan came to the Southern League and people started buying Jordan baseball jerseys, hey, it got people talking about the Southern League. It gets people talking about our league, and there's a lot to talk about this year. It's 2020, Adam. And I want to ask you, what we got you real quickly here, a couple points here that you and I kind of chatted a bit earlier. No particular order, but your thoughts on the 7 versus 9 inning going forward this year, because it's obviously going to be a little different. 7 versus 9 innings. Your thoughts on some teams doing 7, some doing 9. How do you feel about that as a man at the top with the Blue Sox?
Yeah, it's been a discussion topic with the ownership group for over 12 months. So this isn't just a COVID thing either. The whole game at all levels talks about how the game can be sped up, or how is it more exciting, or how is it the equivalent of our Big Bash League here with the cricket? How do we get creative? How do we create international attention? So we have talked about 7 innings. 7 innings does speed it up. It may reduce your roster size. And look, some of the fields around the country have time restrictions. It helps in double headers. So they're the positives. But for me, I'm still the traditionalist that wants to see my starter go 5 or 6. I want to see a setup guy, and I want to see someone come in and close the door in the 9th and just blow doors off with velo. But yeah, and it's probably one of the reasons why I was happy to be a part of the Australian conference and not do the 7 innings hub scenario. I still love 9 innings, but what I do say to the other owners is I'm not critical of your decision to go 7. We'll talk in March and we'll work out what's best for our game.
Gotcha. Point system. There's been some debate about that. I know they've had to adjust the point system. What can you tell us about the point system, for at least from your standpoint? What do you know, and what can you tell fans about the point system update there?
For sure. Look, I don't know why there's such a debate. The 150 points was always a seasonal number across 10 rounds, which averaged out to be 15 points a weekend. What the 15 points did was it's a real fair, equal system where nothing can be swept under the table. This is not salary cap abuse. This is not dodgy deals. You are either affiliated, or you are indie, or you are marquee, or you are Australian, or you are Asian. It is as simple as it can be. It's just black and white. And 15 points allows most teams, as we've seen, to bring in imports. Now, when I grew up, I loved watching the old ABL that had 3 and 4 imports. And it was exciting then. The world's changed. The game's changed. So
Right.
I am all for Australian youth. I've got 5 young kids, mate. This game needs to be here for me in the future. I'm all for development, and I'm all for the Australians getting an opportunity. But it's the state's responsibility to develop players. It's the professional league's responsibility to produce a professional product. Now, that's not to say that I'm all for 20 imports and 2 Aussies. I definitely don't do that. You see that by my rosters. But has our game improved from a standard perspective in the last 3 years? Absolutely. Is it going to be bigger and better this year? Absolutely. And it's the points that did that. The ownership model with some money, potentially, but the points allowed that. Now, to go a step further and to answer your question, yes, we talk about making sure that Australian baseball doesn't become French rugby. We know that. So the 150 points was a pendulum swing to the extreme. Without going into great detail, it's been brought back a couple of months ago to 140, and we'll talk about pro rata in a second. But there is even on the table what that number looks like in the next season, and it is less than that again. So instead of us going pendulum swing and then virtually the opposite way and going from a heap of imports to then trying it with none, we're going to pull this back gradually. So if anyone's got a problem that the 140 points is still too high and we don't develop enough talent in Australia, we're getting to that. But we're just going to make sure that we get the level of baseball that we have here now. So then on the second point of that is, yes, it's been moved 10 points less this year. 10 points doesn't sound a great number. It does make a difference between getting an affiliated guy or an indie guy for the season. It can make the difference between trying to get a marquee MLB guy and getting an affiliated guy. It does also still mean you need to attract your Aussies. It is being prorated. So no one can think that it's 140 points over 6 rounds and now we can get 25 imports in for 22 roster spots. That's not what's happening.
Gotcha. Makes sense. I mean, the idea is eventually get as many of those young Australians in the card. That's what you need. You're only going to go to the game that way, and I think it's the right way to go. We've asked this question on the air a couple times, and I want to ask you as an owner. We've got this whole hub system, and we've got quarantine. How is this thing going to mix and match? It sounds like a great plan on paper, but how's this plan going to really go forward?
I think it's a great plan in your mind. When you put it on paper, you got to go into another country and quarantine for 14 days. You play your whole season. Sounds creative. The league gets some broadcast rights, and Auckland would be great for their game. The problem we're faced with when you write this down on paper is the Australian conference goes about its business. The Auckland conference goes about its business after they've quarantined. Then they each play their own semi-final conference last weekend in January. And then the winner of one conference has to play the other conference. So, I don't know. I won't jinx myself. Let's say Perth, Canberra or Melbourne win our conference. They've now got to fly to New Zealand and play in 7 days but quarantine for 14. You put that on paper. Doesn't make a lot of sense. But It's not my conference to talk about. I'm just a baseball fan chatting here. My conference is okay. I just don't know where we travel to play championship series. So I think there's some news coming out this afternoon. Watch this space.
There you go. There you go. Maybe a plan B. Paul, you want to jump in real quick before we let Adam go?
I was just going to say before we let Adam go, like outside of Manny Ramirez for the Blue Sox this year, who's the one or two guys that people should really keep their eye on this year that may sort of take the league by storm or be sort of the next big thing in the Blue Sox?
Mate, I think if we spoke next Tuesday, we could talk about an announcement. And there's a lot of good things, mate. We got some great Aussies already signed. We're in talks with a lot of big names, and we've got a lot of really good young men that are professionally signed that can't go back to the States for a little bit. So we're going to have a bit of a mix of the youth of our game that have been signed professionally, all the way through to, and I don't care if we're called Dad's Army, we are going to put the Sydney Blue Sox and the Australian Baseball League back on the worldwide map. The amount of international broadcast attraction and interest we've got right now is crazy. And for me, from our 17-year-old prospects all the way through to 48, there is a lot of excitement this year. Yeah.
Adam, appreciate your time. I know you got to go. What I do appreciate about you is how you're open with the fans. You're out there. You're championing the league. You're championing not only your brand but the league. I appreciate you taking the time. We just love to have you. Let me have you for a whole 2 or 3 segments. But I know you got to go. I love what you're doing, man. And I love you're transparent. You're tell us like it is, and appreciate it, mate.
Gets me in a bit of trouble sometimes, but keep it real. You can't go wrong.
Hey, keep it real and drive safe there. Let's keep in the lanes there, okay, sir?
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you, Paul.
Adam. Appreciate it.
It's Adam Dodd right there, CEO of the Sydney Blue Sox. Appreciate him joining us on the show there. I'm taking the time driving there too. What a good guy. I love the fact that he is out there, Paul, and he's not hiding behind a corporate desk, or he's not just a picture in the program or on the website. He's actually out there engaging fans out there. He's out there championing his brand, and that's refreshing. I love that about Mr. Dodd. I don't know why I call him Mr., but our mate Adam. How about that?
Yeah, it was it was good to see he was vocal this week. As I mentioned earlier, there was that report out of New Zealand that the Blue Sox, in fact, paid 10 times the amount of money for Ramirez. So he was quite sort of.
Which I mean, I almost broke it. I wouldn't waste this time, but I was going to say, for them to even, first off, that's impossible to do. I mean, the way the league is set up, yes, you can sign certain. There's still things you can do, but that's almost absurd, because remember, any signing the league does, I don't know if you guys realize this, but ABL fans, you should realize this. If Paul is signed by Canberra tomorrow to be their 30-hole hitter, it's not a secret contract. The league has to sign off on that. The league, it goes to the ABL, they sign off on it before it's actually done and dusted. They can't, the league will not let some kind of crazy ass contract, let's say, go through, and that's one mechanism in place, and nothing is, and that's in any sport, really. I mean, you don't, any sports league worth their salt's going to have a mechanism in place for the system's not abused. I just don't think that was. I know it's tongue in cheek, partner, but I think a little bit, some of it was actually thrown at him in the wrong way.
No, I think a ridiculous contract would be me hitting in the 3-hole for Canberra. That's for sure.
Okay, well, I mean, all right, well, I'll let you bat.
Well, unless the other teams are playing Canberra, they'll have a good easy out. But
yeah, I meant to do this. I was all excited about this. I was so excited that I got it working. I meant to do this. This is what you should have seen before he came on. So I want to give him the treatment. This is what you should have seen. This is what you guys should have seen. Here we go. When you hear that, that means it's special guest time, or it's something you hear on Call the Pin, which we actually replay those over the weekend. So I learned it an assistant partner. I had to at least play it. Any other thoughts on what Adam had to say? I think it was all pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, he alluded to, obviously, at a big announcement from the league level this afternoon, which we'll have to keep watch this space. And also, obviously, Sydney have got some players in the pipeline that next Tuesday, Wednesday. If you're a Sydney fan, I guess next Tuesday, Wednesday is going to be the time to see who's up and coming, and it'll be interesting. It'll be, as we've always said, DV, that team needs to be, for the league to be strong, that team needs to be really strong.
Absolutely.
I think this year as well, with Manny Ramirez coming down, and probably like a lot more attention on the league from the US, particularly around the sports starvation of 2020. Really important for that franchise to be up there this year, and like they've been thereabouts, and it'll be good to see what happens. But big week, DV.
You and I have said this, and I know it. You're a Blue Jays guy. I'm a Texas guy in the major leagues. The Yankees being good is good for baseball. I hate it. I don't like the Yankees, but those big teams, those marquee teams, the New Yorks of the world need to be good for Major League Baseball, because it creates a rivalry when Tampa and them are both good, or whoever is playing New York, Boston and New York, that rivalry. But it's a better league. I hate it. I don't like the Yankees, but again, think about it in those same terms. In the ABL, I'm sure folks in Adelaide and Melbourne and Perth, they're like going, oh, the Blue Sox out. But when Sydney, which is your marquee, it's your biggest market in the country. It's the one, when you say I'm going to Australia, you think of, oh, you're going to Sydney. You're going to see the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. That's what most people outside of Australia think of. Not all, but that's what they think of, much like New York City. So you've got to have a strong franchise there, and I think they're on the right track of establishing a very strong franchise there. Big stuff. So that's kind of my knee jerk.
And I agree. And I think the Sydney name is a far more marketable name in North America than Melbourne. Obviously, there's Melbourne, Florida as well, which sometimes gets confused as well. But
you mean Melbourne, Florida?
Melbourne, Florida. But no, anyway, it's and that there's that. I do like what they're doing with the merch though, DV, and you got the Ramirez. They got the Ramirez Blue Sox logo hoodie there, which
let me put on the screen. Let me give you a full screenshot of this, guys, real quick. There it is. There's the full screenshot. Let me bring this down so you guys can see that. But there is the Manny hoodie right there, as you see that right there, the Manny hoodie. But yeah, the special Manny logo. They're getting their money's worth, and again, that's what we talked about. And I'm gonna segue to this. I'm gonna segue to something. But we're going to get to it in a moment, because we got to go to the next story in just a moment. But you've said this. You said it about 2 weeks ago. I believe I ran it in one of our Call the Pins on the weekend. This Manny thing is just going to trickle down and get more and more guys, fringe big leaguers, late in their career big leaguers. And we saw that with New Zealand, which we're going to get to that in a moment. So I'm teasing that. But I want to give you guys, by the way, questions and comments. But Chris Dunn out there, I mentioned Chris Dunn earlier. He actually, gosh, I have a story, because today I listened to the broadcast, the Kansas City T-Bone St. Paul Saints from 2018. Long story short, the intern brought me the line for the pitcher Chris Dunn as opposed to Chris Nunn, and I was like, wait, Chris Dunn doesn't pitch for them. But anyway, way off topic there. Way off topic there, mate. But good to see that. Mentioning the big story from, I think the biggest story of the week, probably besides the New Zealand story, and maybe what comes down this afternoon, we think, is the Unsworth situation. Dylan Unsworth, which required a little bit of, some investigating from us. He's not going back to Perth. He's going to New Zealand.
Coming out is
nothing after the Tuatara signing him. The Brett pitcher of the year last year in the league was the best pitcher by far, dominating the league strikeout wise. The guy was phenomenal. He is everything that an ace should be. He's what an ace is. Headed it to New Zealand. But again, how does Perth let their number one guy go? That's my question. Am I going to get in trouble for that?
Well, no. I mean, I think like he'd probably be. You'd have to say that he would have been the first person that you'd want signed for the year because he was the number one guy on the rotation, and the best pitcher in the ABL last year. So I think it's a fair and reasonable question. Like as you said, we've dug deep on this one, DV. We've got a couple of different versions, so like hard to say what actually was.
I'm going to give you guys what we reached out. Now, here's the situation. I'm going to kind of give you an overview as Chris working with the Bulls too. Here's the overview here. I'm talking Baseball Australia, baseball's best mate. My name's Dan Vaughan. Paul Morgan with you here on this Friday morning. Glad you're along. Thursday night in the States. Here's the situation. Okay. Unsworth, his camp is telling us that he reached out to Perth and didn't hear back. That's what we're hearing. He called basically his new agent. He signed with a new agent, which is something we've also heard about. His new agent reached out to New Zealand, to the Tuatara, and they said, "Yeah, come on and play." And that's kind of what his camp's saying. Here's what the Perth said. I reached out to the Heat organization. This came from the Heat themselves. I'm just going to read this for you guys on the screen. This was the question I asked. Did you make an attempt to re-sign Unsworth? This is Perth Heat did speak to Dylan, but with confirmation of this season's salary cap, we're not in a position to make any further commitment. How can you make a final offer when you don't know what the salary cap will be? All Australian competitions have a reduced salary cap this summer because of COVID-19, and we know the exact adjustments for the ABL. We must be mindful of the roster and our Australian talent there, and that came directly from the Heat right there, and that came from the Heat right there. Did your thoughts on that comment?
It's hard because we do know that he signed with a new agent, as you mentioned, and the signing with the new agent.
I'm sorry, that actually came from Steve with the Heat. That's why I shouldn't even. I just gave you a Heat. I just said Heat like the Heat are a person, but it was drawing a blank here. Help me out, partner.
Steve Nowakowski, CEO.
Steve Nowakowski, CEO of the Heat. Steve, I'm sorry, mate. I'm all over the place today. Coffee and anyway. Yes, that was from Steve Nowakowski. Sorry about that. I should have probably clarified that. But your thoughts on that comment from Steve in the opening comment there?
I mean, I think it's fair. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's a relatively fair comment. If they don't, if the guidelines for the salary cap haven't been outlined to the teams this year on a COVID-19. I mean, if Unsworth was asking for whatever, and that was a percentage of the salary cap, I think it's a fair. Like you can't really. I mean, it's like if you go and do the groceries for the week and you don't know how much, you don't know if you're going to get paid again soon. You can only buy a certain amount of groceries. So I think that part is fair. How much of it was a new agent with Unsworth wanting to make a splash? I don't know. Like, I guess it's one of those instances that we look at and go, from a Perth perspective, got to be really disappointed that you haven't signed Unsworth. You really got to be disappointed because he was as I say, the number one guy, probably the first guy on all the saying that from a Dylan Unsworth point of view, his value was probably the highest it's going to be in the league as well. And new agent probably went shopping, and the Tuatara may well have had the money in the bank to do it. So it's and we all know it's and from an exposure point of view at the same time. If you're Dylan Unsworth as well, if you're reading the tea leaves and you go, there's a hub in Auckland, they have a deal with Sky Sports, their time zone's relatively friendly to other parts of the world. Maybe I'm going to be broadcast more, maybe getting more exposure is a good thing for me as well. I'm sure all these things went into factor into the end result.
And I want to throw this out there too, because I don't know if this is not something that would be publicized, but I know this has been the case a little bit with bringing in import players, the American Association. There are extra expenses involved in that, and this year more so than ever. Now, usually you're out a plane ticket or whatever. Let's say the American Association, St. Paul brings over a player from Australia. They got to mostly probably cover the visa fees, so things like that. I mean, I've actually handled visa paperwork for Japanese imports in Gary a couple of years ago, and they pay the fees, do the embassy work. You've got to. So this year with COVID, there's going to be extra fees and extra things and extra loopholes and extra legwork and extra paperwork and extra finances probably going into it. So that probably goes into it. Here's my question I ask as well to Steve, and let me go ahead and put it on the screen for you guys. Is the club going to go another route to replace the league's best arm from last season? Because, again, this is the best arm from last season. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. He said Perth Heat will continue to assess all options and players. This will be an interesting summer, new conference, a change of schedules, reduced salary cap, and potential travel restrictions. It's something that Adam Dodd mentioned a moment ago in the whole bubble versus the Australian conference thing. That also went into it as well. So I think there's a lot of things in play here, partner, and that's again, I think you're seeing some of it.
And I think the biggest positive from a Perth perspective, though, is they're probably the only team right now that could have a homegrown rotation, and they've got a lot of good local arms as well. So I guess DV in so many ways, exactly. They paid 10 times more than they did, as Matt says there. So look, I think if you're a Heat fan, as disappointed as you'd be with Unsworth not in the team this year, I mean, straight away in my mind, you go, well, Tom Bailey will come back for a better season from injury. You've got Connor Lowry, of course, back. Yeah, I'm not sure the status of Jake Baker as well, but Jake Baker was a prospect as well. Mitch Neuenborn as well. There's a lot of guys there.
Yeah, Jake's actually stateside right now. He can't get back, but he's still stateside in Florida after the Tigers did their shuffling with their minor league affiliates and didn't release their players back in May, I believe it was. But Jake's still here in the States, so yeah. But he would be a guy with low mileage on him too. But you're right, and that's leads to my next question. I asked Steve as well. Steve, I asked him this: the Heat have a reputation of securing the best talent, non-major league affiliated talent. That is, does this signal a change of philosophy for the ball club by not going after a big time indie guy or a free agent guy? And Steve said one player's decision does not change the Perth Heat's philosophy. So this doesn't change anything. The Heat still expect to compete at a very high level, which I guess for Heat fans, that's good to see.
Well, I mean, you don't. I mean, you still also could have like you used to. I mean, you don't. I'm not sure if Warwick Sawfold. I'm not sure if his contract is another year in career or not. But I mean, you don't know. At the back end of the season, you could have, could roll Warwick Sawfold out, which is in many ways obviously is an upgrade in your rotation as well. So there's.
Sure.
I think from a Perth point of view, like as you would have to. I think you'd have to. You'd have to wonder, why the big fish didn't land. But at the same time, more than any other team in the ABL, they've got enough sort of arms locally to kind of cover it. I think they're certainly in the best shape that way. But
yeah, and the final thing I asked Steve Nikoski was this: I sort of the player announcements or any more player announcements to share for us. And I love this from Steve. We'll have a host of announcements to make and look forward to discussing them with our favorite baseball program. That's us. That's us. That's us.
I thought maybe he's going somewhere else. So.
I'm like, that's us. But yeah, I appreciate Steve taking the time. Again, I emailed him and I'll say this: you and I have a long history in the West. We know those folks very well. I'll tell you this. We've seen Lachlan Dale, who basically puts the team together. He's the guy behind the scenes who had a baseball Western Australia. Lockie is, of course, former played in the States Padres system back in the day. He's got vast contacts, really good connection with the Rays. You don't know A, what the Rays are going to send, and B, Lockie has a really good Rolodex, aided by a lot of former players, to help track down the next Unsworth. Remember, this is a team that over the years, you remember a guy named Mike Ekstrom? He was kind of an Unsworth starter kit, wasn't he? I mean, there are guys out there that Perth's brought in over the years that have been as equally as quality as Unsworth. So I feel like if you're a Heat fan, you should feel pretty safe with the right guy, Lachlan Dale, making the call.
Well, I still think Mike Ekstrom to this day is the best pitcher that's ever pitched in the Australian baseball league. He was unreal. For memory, if memory serves me, I think he's 8 starts, something like that. His ERA was about .63. He was unbelievable. He was unbelievable, and Yeah, look, I wouldn't be. Yeah, I wouldn't be like it's. I wouldn't be too worried about. But and you're right. And then with the Rays and of course the Rays affiliation, what does that mean this year? I mean, with no minor league baseball as well, what does that mean from a Tampa Bay Rays perspective? Is that like our best pitching prospect 1, 2, 3 or whatever? We want to give these guys live at bats, live innings. So who knows? They could end up with some Tampa Bay Ray guy that just is lights out at the same time. But
and that's another thing. You don't know that perhaps this year the Rays they don't usually send arms, aces, but you never know. They may need to send a guy who'll be on limited innings, but you may see them send a guy who needs the innings, who didn't get the AA or high A innings he would normally get, and he's got to get innings before spring training or before the next season to make that logical jump. You just never know how that's going to transpire. And the Rays have such a very good farm system that you just don't know. Let's see here. With no MLB, will there be plenty of available import talent looking to showcase? Yes, even fringe MLB talent. And yes, that's exactly what Chris, you're right on there, and that's exactly what Paul's been saying. You're going to see, and again, you don't know. The player pool's deeper now. I can tell you that because there are a lot of guys. There's a league in Houston called the Constellation League. They played in Sugar Land down in Houston, Texas. Roger Clemens was a manager of one of those teams. Former big leaguer P.D. Convelia managed another one. Clemens' sons played down there. A lot of former big leaguers and AAA guys are playing in this little 4-team league. These guys are trying to get at bats and innings. Those guys are all playing basically a small season, itching and ready to go. Those guys are out there too. Should it work for your salary cap and your point system? So their body's out there more so than other years. So again, that kind of closes the topic there. But I think that the final thing is, the salary cap hasn't changed. That's what I want to point out. The salary cap did not change as of yet. Now that still could happen. There still could be adjustments. But at the moment, the salary cap still stays $110,000 on the ABL. So there's no lower cap at the moment. That's the only thing that I'll throw out there that's still now that could change, but as of right now, that's the situation. So as far as
what do you think, DV? Just a final topic on this, because of the team he's going to the Auckland Tuatara, as we know. So he's going to presumably, if that hub goes ahead. He's going to pitch 7 innings. It's a 7-inning ball game. So presumably he'll pitch a minimum of 6 innings of those starts. Many times probably 7 if time permits, and if the lead is like. Do you have to take into consideration when you think about that, and then you think about Perth or whoever's missed out on a guy, Auckland have got a guy that history will tell you is probably going to mean that in one game your bullpen is not going to get taxed. I mean, there needs to be some form of conversation around that, doesn't there? Some form of, as you head into the postseason, there needs to be. And I know the 7 versus 9 thing, but there does need to be a bit of a town hall meeting at some point around the strategy of that.
I think so, because again, we've talked about this, and we use Graham Lloyd as an example of former big league with the Yankees. His role in those championship Yankee years was a setup guy. He was a matchup guy late in the ball game. If your starter got you 6, as Adam Dodd said a moment ago, he's a traditionalist. Wants his guy to go 5 or 6 innings. If your starter goes 5 or 6 and you're only playing 7 innings, well, suddenly you could have multiple closers in a doubleheader and have some depth there. Or let's just say a guy only has to go 5 innings now, as opposed to 6. Or maybe only go 4 innings to get a 5th inning guy and a 6, 7. I mean, you've got options there. What it does, it shortens the ball game for your bullpen. We're in a big league game or a normal 9-inning ball game, 6 innings. Okay, your starter's out in 6. You got 7, 8 to get to 9. Your closer's your guy. It's those 2 innings. It's that extra 6 at bats or extra 6 outs. Suddenly it goes from an extra 6 outs to an extra 3. Perhaps if a guy like Unsworth goes out and tosses 7 strong complete, you don't need your bullpen.
Yeah,
it does, and I've seen it happen in the American Association. I've seen it happen firsthand where double headers with teams with studs that are starting can go out there to a complete. You see these guys get complete ball games going 7, saving your closer, saving your bullpen, and you wind up with game 2 of the doubleheader. Your guy goes 5, and you got your bullpen position to go 6 and 7, and you sweep a doubleheader. I see it all the time. It happens. Those teams that have that strength in the bullpen and have a great starting pitching, you just shorten the ball game down. It's simple math. And that's the one thing I think Adam was saying as well. I get, and we talked to this with Cam Vale, I get why they're doing it. I understand why they're doing it. It works for the TV situation. And in 2020, we need that for our game in Australia. But from a strategy standpoint, Unsworth is probably going to save their bullpen at least one ball game a series. And I'd put him out there and say, you know what? I'll roll him out there the doubleheader, or I'm rolling him out there an opener, and I might even bring him back to work an inning or 2 on Sunday. Heck, why not?
Well, exactly, and that's more of it. If he starts game 1, you got him in got him in 6, and Matt's spot on.
Yeah. Atherton does the same thing, and that's what you do. You just shorten the ball game down in 7 innings. If the idea is your starter to go 5 to 6 innings, and you got 7, 8, 9, you got to get through. And suddenly you just got to go. He's just got to go 5 innings, and you got 6, 7. It changes the whole dynamics how your bullpen's constructed. And I think you'll see the interesting part to me. And I think Adam sort of alluded to that. What happens in the postseason? We're kind of got off topic here, but what happens in the postseason when these teams meet up, or when other teams meet up? A busy week in Auckland as well. Those boys have been busy signing not 1. Not 2, not 3, not even 4, 5 former big leaguers led. The main name, the guy that I think everybody's going to recognize off the bat, I think, was going to be Eric Young Jr. Be the first name. He's kind of a marquee name, although I sort of think really Justin Grimm's kind of a big name because he was most recently in the World Series. So I think that also is probably a pretty big deal too.
Danny Valencia can play, Dave. I used to watch him a fair bit of Toronto. He can play. So
this is what you talked about a couple of weeks ago, that this Manny Ramirez door opening, and what we talked about, because again, we're talking about Chris Dunn, our mate who was with us in 12-13. These guys didn't come over to play in the ABL back then. No. This was not something we talked about. Guys who are going to make it in the big leagues maybe one day. Very rarely. Now, Luke Hughes was the exception. He was an Australian, but you didn't have a lot of U.S.-born players coming over, big leaguers playing with the ABL. Now, it's pretty common. It was that way last year to a degree, especially when Adelaide and Melbourne both reloaded with a couple of guys who have been in the big leagues. And now you got Auckland. Somebody's doing something there. Somebody's got a speed dial to somebody over in the States.
Yeah, I agree. And Eric Young Jr., still got some mileage on the tires. Danny Valencia as well, as I said, 2015 in the Blue Jays, he wasn't an everyday player, but he was strong. Grimm was part of Justin Grimm was a good shot of him on the front of the bus in the 2016 World Series ticker tape parade there in Chicago. So these are guys who and this is then Valencia becomes like a different and Young become a different animals to Ramirez, who. We probably think Manny is at some level, but you mean to tell me Justin Grimm won't get a few big outs as well? And then all of a sudden you've got him as well as Unsworth in that in that pitching stable. Valencia's going to hit a few balls out as well. Young may steal a few bags along the way as well, DV, and it's you're putting together a different model.
And you make a point too. Suddenly pitching for the Tuatara and pitching on the island, you don't got to pitch. You don't have to pitch 6, 7 innings. You can only a guy like Grimm can work his way from 4 to 5, and there's some argument here. If he's got something in the tank, or a guy like Zach Phillips, former big leaguer as well, they signed. If those guys can get you 4 or 5 innings, and you got some depth like that, I mean, it just bodes well behind an Unsworth, who clearly is going to be your ace. But I would think that you probably have an ace in waiting, and a guy like Grimm, I would think. So I think it definitely bodes well for you as far as guys like that. These are all names that when I read the story, I knew every name. It wasn't like, wait, no.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
I sort of heard that guy, but I mean, these are guys I'd heard. And like I said, Grimm, I just saw. It seemed like he pitched in the World Series. a couple of years ago, which was a couple of years ago. So, and Phillips, a guy that I'd seen as well, Kyle Davies as well, all guys that we'd seen in the big leagues is in recent memory. So it's not like these are guys that are fringe guys. You got to kind of scratch your head and say, wait, when was that guy in the big leagues? Was he really in the big leagues? But yes, these guys were all there.
And it goes to sort of maybe the strategy that Auckland have a little bit, DV. As we know, we know Australia's punching well above its weight from an international rankings point of view. New Zealand on the rise as well. Potentially are the Tuatara being used as bring in these experienced guys to bring in a couple of young guys from New Zealand to bring through in the development as well. So
Fonseca was going to go until he found out about the paycheck. Yeah, well, that's funny. That didn't work. That didn't work for me.
But remember, at some point, Jose Canseco was the man touted, and that was sort of the first of those. Really? Could he actually be coming down or not? But I can't remember what happened. He had some stuff on Twitter from memory that he was going to play baseball in Australia.
Early Twitter stuff. I do remember him seeing that. But real quickly, Tuatara on paper. Again, on paper, we started the season tomorrow. You got to say, at least you like the pitching staff, and I think they might be a pretty good ball club. I mean, and I love what Steve Mintz does. Yeah. Steve Mintz is about as good of an ambassador for this league in North America as anybody. This guy's out with coaching with the Rangers organization. He's out there spreading the love of the ABL around affiliated baseball. But Mintzy's got a little bit of an arsenal going with the arms there, doesn't he?
Well, he does, and you'd know it better than I would, DV. But I'd imagine a few position players in that Rangers organisation may come. I'm not sure how deep or good the Rangers farm system is, but I'm sure pick up a couple of guys thinking the Brasso, the Fraley sort of type that probably we would assume are waiting in the wings somewhere in the Texas Rangers land.
Was the best World Series for done right there. Yeah. Tuatara, we shift from the Tuatara. Again, busy week for them. Again, in case you missed it, they signed 5 former big leaguers. And again, those names, the names Justin Grimm, Kyle Davies, Zach Phillips, and then Danny Valencia and Eric Young Jr. I'm so old, I remember his father. So, I mean, that's how old I am. So, yes, all good stuff for Auckland. And I think, too, and I'll just kind of close with this, for Auckland, because they're the only team in the country right now, in that country, playing baseball. They're trying to grow the game, get their hopes up and all this. They also have, besides Geelong, Korea, the best TV deal. And it's like we talked about earlier. Adam Dobb was saying earlier, and he kind of alluded to it. I thought about this term, striking while the iron's hot. Sydney's going to strike while the iron's hot. They're going to bring somebody else on the heels of Manny. Auckland, the same thing. They're going to strike while the iron's hot. They're going to try to, hey, it's something we talked about the league needs to do when things like this happen, and they're doing it. These teams are doing it. So there's interest out there. Let's jump on this and let's make this the best news we possibly can. And striking while the iron's hot, both it seems to be at least the goal for the Tuatara right now.
And it'll be interesting as it moves forward because Tuatara probably have the most friendly time zone for North America in many ways from a broadcast perspective, and Perth probably have the most friendly from an Asia point of view. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see whether guys, like some of the future thoughts are like, I'm going to go play for Perth because more people in the Asia time zone are going to watch me play, or I'm going to play for Auckland because more people in North America, depending on where you want to go. So it's interesting, but to think in, the ABL these days, DV, when we said about this show, relaunching the show, 6-7 weeks ago, or 8 weeks ago, when we took it off dry dock, we thought we'd be predominantly talking about Major League Baseball, but here we are. This is a show packed full of ABL, and we've still got more.
Yeah, we thought for sure this would be mostly talking about Liam Hendriks, and more Liam Hendriks, but it's turned into enough news and really good news. I mean, for teams, but Adelaide didn't sit by. Now it wasn't all roses for the folks on the island. They did lose one of their own, New Zealander, Kyle Glosky. I didn't realize this. He's pitched for 3 teams in the league. Did you realize that? He's on his third team, and he's only 21 years old.
I knew it was his third. I knew Auckland was his second team, so Adelaide naturally coming. So what's bizarre about this for Kyle is, like, if everything goes ahead as it is, I mean, he's a New Zealander who's going to stay in New Zealand, but because obviously Adelaide are going in theory to Auckland, so it's a bit of a strange one that you would you change it. Because this hasn't really happened in these bubble scenarios so far. We haven't had trades and whatnot in these bubble scenarios. So you've got,
right,
a guy who's playing at the same stadium as he did last year for a different team in a bubble environment. But this is a big pickup for the Adelaide Giants as well.
Yes.
They've done quite well from and I wonder from a Tuatara point of view, what came first? Did they know they had Unsworth, and then Kyle decided that, maybe my place based on the players you've signed is not best to be at Tuatara Nation, and I might go to the Giants? Or did the Tuatara know that Kyle was going to sign with the Adelaide Giants, and that sped up the process to sign Dylan Unsworth?
Yeah, and I think, and Todd Van Stencil is going to be heading there. We love Todd, big fan of his. Also picked up, as well as Van Stencil. Who else I picked up? Luke Wilkins. Luke Wilkins as well. Adelaide, in assuming the right pieces come back for them, I don't know where they stand on their imports and where that's going to go. Mikey Reynolds is going to wind up the batting champion, it looks like, in the American Association, at least finish the top 3 and hitting in the 360s up there in the States. I don't know how if he's coming back or not. I don't know where they stand, but quietly they've kind of gone about their business. They already had a team that was right on the cusp last year. And we haven't really, we kind of forgot they were in the finals last year. They were playing the Claxton Shield. I mean, quietly, they're kind of just doing their thing and plugging right along there. And the only thing about this is that is that you may have an innings limit to a degree on Kyle. But other than that, I think Adelaide's positioned themselves well.
Well, agree. And Aaron Whitefield hasn't had as much time probably at the Twins that he would have loved. So you assume that you might get a fair bit of work from Aaron Whitefield as well out there in center field for the Giants this year as well, if all things go well. And it's pulling out to be, maybe in the next couple of weeks we'll have to start doing a power rankings DV based on these signings. But the Giants, I agree, they've just chipped away at doing some really, and they've kind of flown under the radar a little bit. But Van Steensel sort of helps out their bullpen a little bit, and Wilkins as well, and add Kyle in as well. And if you can get the Jordan McArdles and the Mikey Reynolds, if he can come back, and Aaron Whitefield and these guys, and Tank, a great manager as well. They are not so much the sleeping Giants, because they were in the championship series last year, but they're a team that probably have got a little bit better. We haven't heard a lot from Melbourne. We know that obviously D-Sam Miguel's going to be the manager there, but Delman Young, whether he comes back or not sure. Luke Hughes, of course, in retirement. Peter Moylan in retirement as well. So, Adelaide just chipping away at they're a good ball club last year, a really good ball club.
Speaking of the Aces, I'm going to talk about them just briefly here, but one more connection with this whole deal. Remember that Glasky also is part of the Philly system.
Yep.
And I believe, actually, well, Matt, you're right on with me too. You're right on the same page as me. That I believe Chris Adamson is a coach in their minor league system too. So he's going to be being monitored for innings, and the Phillies probably feel pretty good. I'm sure the Phillies had a little something to do with this. Hey, let's let one of our coaches sort of monitor what's going on with this guy. It's all pretty, especially when you don't pitch you don't pitch any innings in North America during the MILB season. But I forgot to load the Aces logo in there, but there's the comparison logo right there.
New logo.
New one right there. Don't forget, we're all talking about Auckland and Sydney, but don't forget these guys in Victoria. They won the whole thing last year and pretty convincingly. I mean, what we saw from them in Perth, and I saw them in the finals. And what they did to reload that roster and the back end, and what Alan D. San Miguel will inherit. Don't forget, these guys won a Shield last year, and I would think through all this mess, you got to figure they're still odds-on favorites. I mean, you hadn't even mentioned them yet.
Well, the one interesting part, DV, if they go down the same like route as they did last time, where they, like Nate Sampson, you were always talking highly about their independent ball players for the Melbourne Aces. If they go down that avenue again and they decide to go predominantly independent ball players, and it turns out that independent ball players come up trumps from the Claxton Shield perspective against veteran MLB players, then you've got a whole new. I guess you've got a whole new debate as well on what pool you're fishing on if you want to win a Claxton Shield.
I mentioned that they did make a couple of moves that Melbourne did. I meant to mention this earlier that. And I meant to ask Adam about this, but John Gessner signed with Sydney, a young man who's from Manly, I believe, but signed with Sydney. And that did mention that earlier, but want to throw that out there. But a young guy, 20-year-old guy, going to be with that Sydney club. And you need those young 20-year-old Australian players. You need them younger than that even. Get them in the pipeline. Aces, though, the reason I didn't say much, but Cameron Gibbons, who we saw last year, I mean, he made his debut in Perth, I believe. We were there. In relief, and then Jeremy Young, both are back with the Aces. So a couple of not their marquee guys, but these are guys that provided depth for them, and they're younger guys and guys, Australian guys, are going to be back. And that's, again, we got to remember, as you construct these rosters, as you put these things together, it's very important to have those younger guys and have those. For every Manny Ramirez you have in your ball club, you need those smaller pieces that complement your roster. And these are a couple of young men that are getting back together again, and good to see as well as they join John Kennedy, Josh Tolles, and Blake Townsend, have already been confirmed by those Aces. So good for them as well.
Yeah. And I was going to say, Josh Tolles, we always talk about, we wax enthusiastic about him, and good to see he's confirmed there as well, because it could have been a chance with the Phillies connection potentially that he headed back to Giants land, but he's still, in my mind, and I'm sure in your mind, DV, as well, the best arm out of the bullpen in the country. So it's they're still chipping away.
Yeah, I'm as I see these rosters take shape for the most part. I mean, I look at Auckland, and then looking at Adelaide, and looking obviously Melbourne and Sydney. They're all delicious. Now, some of the teams have made less noise. Perth, for example, still kind of hasn't made a lot of noise. But Steve told us earlier that they were making some noise. Brisbane hasn't made a lot of noise either. Ryan Searle is pretty much the only marquee name. But again, he's a guy that's, you can count on him pretty much every day anyway. He's one of those guys, a mainstay. Canberra, quietly, Tucker Nathans is back in the fold. Boss Manaroa, Steve Kent, Frank Gailey, a couple of guys like that, Robbie Perkins. And they've got some names out there. But I look at these names, all these guys that have been signed by the ABL teams. I'm kind of excited because this could really, I mean, I've never been this excited early on. Now, granted, I got to tap the brakes just a bit because we don't even know if we're going to play ball. But assuming we play ball, you throw the traditional names you see in there plus the new names. This is going to be a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, it is, and it's you are right, DV. I mean, it's still sort of. It's still a little bit of fantasy land, if you want to say that. I mean, as I say, now as we sit here, September 11, I didn't realize it was September 11, but there you go. You do kind of sit there and go, well, our border's still closed in Western Australia. You can't get in and out, but other sports are having their challenges in summer to get teams through. So. Yeah, it's still a pipe dream, but it's exciting to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, and I thought Adam brought a really good point up too. To go back to that, but I think he brought a really good point up that that what happens going forward with this whole with these two conferences. I guess my question, and before we dive into what Liam's done this week, I get the feeling that we're now the point. This is been 3 weeks since the fixture came out? 4, something like that. Is that about right? 4 weeks? 3. We're about to test Plan A. I think Adam Dodd raised enough questions, and I think you and I have, that we've got to start asking ourselves. If you start reading some of the tea leaves, is there going to be an adjustment coming soon? And will we see that? We've already mentioned that the salary cap is dropping. We mentioned that. I'm sorry, the point system is dropping. Potential salary cap adjustments, not yet, but the point system is dropped. And the theme seems to be there. It's all subject to change. They can adjust things on the fly as they need be. I get a feeling we're getting close to maybe a plan B. What do you think?
Look, I think I agree because, as I say, it's still mid-September. It's hard to envision anyone's getting into Victoria anytime soon. They've increased their lockdown now till back end of October, I think, or mid-October. It's very hard to see that Australian conference in its current. I don't know how you could have any faith in that happening right this second. And we know Cam's a glass half full guy, and that's great, but I would envision that potentially that plan B would be starting to get rolled out or floated, or the prospect of it happening. Selfishly, I'd love to see a hub in Perth. Don't know if that's going to happen or not, but it's. But yeah, like I just can't see teams in October, November, December, in 3 or 4 months' time. I just can't see teams freely coming into Perth, playing 3 games, wandering around the streets of Perth, flying out again. Boy, I get giddy these days, DV, when I see a plane in the sky, because it doesn't happen that often. It used to happen all the time, but it's rare sighting is a bird in the sky these days.
Yeah,
so it's
I got to jump on one next week, and it's bizarre. I hear them all the time here, but again, I have this habit of reading every travel article I can read about coming in and out of Australia and New Zealand. And boy, every time I read one, I just kind of, my head sinks lower and lower and lower. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. That's why I feel like a plan B has got to be on the horizon at some point, just from a travel standpoint. But we know that we know there's going to be baseball in Australia or in the ABL. Let's put it to you that way.
Yeah.
Under what form and format? That's what we all keep speculating. So we do know that. Real quickly, let's run through this guy. Nice week for him again. Did you realize? Now, granted, he got some love on ESPN. There was a really good article I tweeted out. He's getting lots of love in Major League Baseball. Do you realize he's given up only 3 earned runs this year, Liam Hendriks? Did you realize that?
I actually did, because I watched him for the first time the other day. Well, not the first time, but I was watching the A's game. Can't think of who they were playing now off the top of my head. And Liam came out to work. I think they had a 9-4 lead or something like that. And I thought, beauty, he's going to have 1, 2, 3 inning. And, kind of got the first out, then wheels off, gave up an earned run. And the broadcaster, that was just, I think it's just the 3rd one he gave up for the year. So I was like, the one time that I watched
San Diego.
San Diego. It was San Diego. That's right. But the one time I watched him live, I was like, I must be a jinx. So I won't watch you live anymore. I'll just save it for the highlights now for Liam, because I was all giddy. And the kids up going, this guy, he's lights out. He's from Perth. He's Wanneroo. My son thought it was the greatest thing ever, because and I was like, well, maybe we should stop watching him live. But
it happens like that. Well, this week, here's the week that was for him. 3 appearances, 3 innings. He's consistently going out an inning. He went 1-0 with a save, 6 strikeouts in 3 frames. He gave up just 3 hits, 1 earned run. That was on the 5th of September against San Diego. It was his first earned run since August 8th. That's 8 consecutive appearances scoreless over 8 innings as well. For the season, 3-0, 11 saves out of 12 ops, 1.40, 19 games, 19 1/3, 11 hits, only 11 hits allowed. Again, that 3 earned runs. And here's the key. And he didn't mention this per se in the ESPN article I read, but he sort of alluded to it in his confidence and mental approach. What was the one thing that got him in so much trouble early on? The inconsistency with the walks. Only 3 walks. He's throwing strikes, as we talked about before. Only 3 free passes the entire season. If you keep those walks down, you don't got to do much more than throw the ball at the plate. And he's done that. 29 strikeouts in 19 ball games, only 3 walks, and that confidence, you just see him growing and growing. I think that number that just jumped out at me, the 3 walks for the season. That's what you need from a closer. That's what you need from any big league arm. 3 walks over the course of 19 1/3 extrapolates out to a pretty nice little ratio there.
David, where's his value now? I mean, obviously, I haven't prepared in terms of his contract at the moment with the Athletics, but if he was hitting the free agency market right now, I mean, he would be getting enormous money.
Yeah, absolutely. He'll cash in. He's past the arbitration eligible, which that would have been the contract he got with the Athletics, which basically prevented him from being a part of Team Australia 2 years ago. Was he was coming to his arbitration year? There's talk about the Athletics because at the moment they better sign him now to the extension. And I know I saw him tweet. Somebody tweeted out to him, or actually Instagrammed out to him. Instagramming, how you say it? Instagramming. They Instagrammed us and said, "Hey, hope you sign." And he's like, "I love to sign an extension. I want to sign an extension." He wants to be an Athletic. He loves the area. He loves the team, the organization. They've been good to him. They believe in him. I think there's a lot of that. He's one of those guys I think that feels loyal to them. But he's at a point right now, if the A's mess around and say, oh, we're going to let this thing go and we'll kind of visit it down the road, he'll cash in. And I don't know where his his contract status, I'd probably look that up, but they're trying to work on an extension.
But that is, this is, our good friend Jeff Hooker here, big Oakland Athletics fan, but this is traditionally something that Oakland, like Liam at the level he is now, this is traditionally something that Oakland get wrong at the moment, like somehow either trade him off for parts or fail to re-sign him. This would be not uncommon in Oakland, DV.
Yeah. By the way, Matt says, I keep put over our heads there. Sorry about that, partner. Our names there. A TV deal in Australia conference would be great to see these guys play, not just the international hub. Stand by for that. I do believe, what I do understand though, Matt, is that all teams in the Australian the Australian conference are going to are going to stream their ball games via video. Now, to what degree that's going to probably vary from team to team. It'd be great if they work out a deal. I don't know how close they are. We keep hearing some talk about that maybe there is a possibility of that. Your thoughts, partner, as I dig up the contract there, on the possibility of having some kind of deal.
Yeah, look, I think it has to be the right deal. I'm a big believer in. I actually don't mind what's currently happening on YouTube with the guys. I think if you go with the deal with KO or Fox Sports and you put the game behind a paywall, yes, you'll reach a little bit of an audience. I like Chris Coleman over in Canberra helped orchestrate a deal with NITV, which is a national broadcast as well, free-to-air television as well. I think if you're going to get a TV deal in Australia, it needs to be free-to-air just to get that exposure. I think sports fans kind of know it kind of know it all. I'd love to see them do a deal with the national broadcaster like NITV, or at the same time, I think the YouTube thing. I think if people did that to the standard that Show Screens do it, which is a production company from Perth, I think great. But I do think that I think you could get away easily with the YouTube streaming. I think it's fine. However, the caveat being that there needs to be a standard that all broadcasts are at, and for me, that probably needs to be tabled and run by Show Screens, who do it in the West, who I think do such an incredible job. Because the problem is you do have teams that just don't invest as much into the broadcast, and because of that, you kind of sometimes have a pop fly to left field and the camera's still on the catcher, or the camera's out, and but ideally, yeah. I think
it's something we get. Yeah, I'm sorry to step on you, but Matt, it's something we get in the American Association. We've got a really good new product that they do on Vimeo. And it's a really upgraded video product. Now, granted, the T-Bones didn't play this year, but the 6 teams that did, there's a lot of things you can do with it. And we put some content on there. The long and the short of it is, the one problem with the video stream, and I think Paul's right on, what Christian does with Show Screens out West, top-notch stuff. I mean, my demo has that top-notch stuff on my demo tape, because I'm so proud of the work they do, and it makes us as broadcasters look that much more seasoned. But in the American Association, it varies. There are some places where it's 2 fixed cameras, that's all you get. There are a couple of places over the years, there's been 1 camera upstairs, a high camera, and that's it. You've got some places like St. Paul who do a slick TV type production, Chicago, Milwaukee. It all varies. And so your product varies by team, because there's no standard and there's no league-wide deal. Like in the States with Fox Sports, all the Athletics, for example, their graphics and pretty much their presentation looks no different than the Yankees or the
Yeah.
Rays. They're all pretty standard because most of those are regional sports networks that are all owned by one group.
Yeah.
But when you start streaming video, it's the old adage that Cam and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. Your best team is sometimes your worst team, and vice versa. You got to only strong as your weakest link. And in a streaming situation, that's very important. Liam's contract, here is the contract situation. He signed through 2020. His base is this year is 5.3. He will, with the adjustment with the season, the COVID season, will earn 1.9. That's $1 million US. He is signed through 2020. Well, obviously, and I think, and Chris Dunn just made a mention ago. I mean, if he's a $5 million, basically a $5 million a year player right now, I mean, it obviously starts probably at what, 40% of that, 30% of that, or above that, I would think. I mean, we're looking at probably 8, 9 a year, I would think, for a guy who can go out there and get you outs. And I think an extension would be huge, but he signed through 20. So it'd be an extension, or he'd be out on the free agent market and could very easily be a Cub. So, all good. All good. One more note to pass along to you guys. I'll bring Liam down there. A couple notes. Actually, this is an MILB note. It may not mean a lot to you folks watching us on the show, but let me give you a little, this is kind of a tea leaves thing. If you watch MILB and MLB, this news came out that Pat O'Connor is he's the CEO of the minor leagues in the States, MILB. Pat O'Connor, been 38 years in baseball, is retiring. The last, I believe, 15 years, he's been in charge of the MILB down in Florida. And I think you're seeing him stepping aside leads me to believe that what you're going to see is the MILB being run more by the MLB, which is what's been the rumor for a while. MLB's going to contract the MILB, make the MILB smaller, let be fewer teams. MLB will run the MILB. I got a lot of MIs and MLs, but I think the current contraction and the rumor of the MLB running the league probably contributed to that. But Pat O'Connor is a guy that if you guys are watching MILB games online, it's because of him. This whole branding of MILB baseball came from him. The way they sell the game in the minor league level in the States came from him. So if you're watching Pensacola Wahoos or Blue Wahoos, whatever they're called, or Toledo Mud-Ins or whoever, thanking a guy like Pat O'Connor, he's the guy that did that, so he's stepping aside. And then one more note too, partner, I give you guys this, the American Association. Mikey Reynolds, Coral Prime, both will finish up in the top 10 in the league, hitting in the American Association, as I believe they're still playing tonight. This night's the last night of the season, but Reynolds, I got to pull that up here. I had it batting .332. That's number 2 in the league right now as of tonight. Coral Prime .335 is actually number 2, and Reynolds number 3 in the American Association. So a couple of ABLers over there doing. There's more than that, but that's just a kind of list of guys that are running low. Running short of time. You want to get this thing wrapped up here. We're gone a little bit over, but thoughts on it? Have you had a chance to check out the American Association, partner?
I haven't had a lot of chat. I'll be honest, I haven't had a lot of it, but I loved Coral Prime when he was playing here for the Heat, and of course Bosch's as well, and then Mike Hart. So now it gets to the pointy end, and hopefully, DV, we might hear you on the air.
Mike Hart and Alex Boshiers are both Heat alums from 17-18. They're playing for Sioux Falls. They're the number 2 team in the postseason, which starts on Saturday. And then the Milwaukee Milkmen are the opponent, and that's who they'll be playing. Milwaukee doesn't have anybody, I believe, in the ABL, no ABL alums, but a couple of Sioux Falls Canaries, Mike Hart and Alex Boshiers. Grant K from Brisbane and Madison Younger from Canberra also playing for those Canaries as well. But they'll be playing best of 7. Yes, there may be a DB sighting in Sioux Falls. We'll just find out. But
that would
how
be
about
big.
that?
That would be big news,
That'd
folks.
be big.
Breaking news.
Big breaking news for sure. Any final thoughts on this one? This was a loaded show. A lot to we jumped over all kinds of stuff here, but your final thoughts on the week?
Well, I think it's a case of strap yourself in for the ABL. It sounds like there's a big announcement an announcement this afternoon. Sydney got players signing next week, and you'd imagine a couple others will get going next week as well. So Boy, I don't remember the stove being this hot, DV, in the ABL world, and it's just it's interesting and it's great. We didn't even talk.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just saying we didn't even get to anything that's going on in the world of Major League Baseball. I'm actually my final thought of that is I'm still shocked that thing's going, and hats off to Major League Baseball for proving a skeptics wrong. But
yeah, some teams may play 5 games, some may play 60, but yeah, they're getting it done. But I think when I'll give you my knee jerk, my closing thought. What this tells me is that if we're able to take a show for an hour and ramble about winter baseball, now granted, not summer baseball in North America, winter baseball in the Southern Hemisphere, which is summer in the Southern Hemisphere, a development league, we're able to take an hour's worth of time and do that. That's something, honestly, mate, 3 years ago, I don't know if we could have done that. I don't think in September we could have done that. We're because this league is aggressive and they're signing players, and getting rivalries going, and getting energy going. We're able to talk about it, and that's the exciting part. Now, granted, we're crying because Unsworth won't be a Perth here. Auckland's cheering. Auckland's all upset about Sydney, and vice versa. All that. It's stuff we haven't had a chance to talk about, and the fact we're doing that is showing you what a great job the ABL is doing, and we're on the right track. And again, like I said earlier, iron's hot, man. We got to strike now. We got to strike now, mate.
We got it. And we'll be back again next week, DV, to talk.
Yeah, we are. We are. By the way, one final thing. Chris Dunn says, nice to hear you guys. Hope you're still well, mates. Keep in touch. Fingers crossed. Yes, good to see you, mate. Good on you, mate. Good to see you. But, now we're going to announce the time. Is it a time change for us?
Time change, yes. 7 a.m. in the West, 6 p.m. in Central Time, and 7 p.m. on the Eastern Coast. Just there's the daylight savings happening in the East Coast as well, and just 7 a.m. helps us kind of get a nice 9 a.m., 10 a.m. start in the East. And it's probably the most friendliest, a little early for the West, but it's good. So 7 a.m.
I'll redo all of our logos and stuff tomorrow when after this, but we'll do that. But a big thanks to you, mate, and always good stuff. Big thanks to Adam Dodd as well for joining us. I know he's a busy fella, but big thank you. He was driving, and I took the time to jump on. Appreciate it. Steve Nalkowski as well of the Heat. Appreciate him taking the time to answer the questions in those hard. And actually, Dylan Unsworth as well. Dylan actually got back to us. We were trying to line him up, and we are actually lining a lot of folks up. We're working on this thing to continue to grow it, getting guests for you guys, get a chance to ask questions. Please share this broadcast, share it with your friends. Our Call to the Pin, which will air the next couple of days, I'll have one for you Saturday, Sunday. We'll kind of rewind the clock on this one. Of course, this show will be archived as well for you guys. So please share it. Tell folks about us. Tell folks about the Australian Baseball League, and bring your questions and comments as always right here. And we're here next week, same time, same place. So a big thanks, partner. Awesome job, mate. Hey, go enjoy your morning coffee. And
I'll get the coffee, get the breakfast going, and get to the office. That'll be good. But thanks, DV. Thanks for you putting it together. You're the best in the business, and we'll look forward to it next week.
Appreciate your broadcast partner. Let's roll the close. Let's see you guys next week. As I keep saying, let's be kinder, gentler. Let's show love. Lots of virtual hugs. Wear your mask. Be good to folks. Let's be better tomorrow than we were today. We'll see you guys next week on Talking Baseball Australia Live. Baseball's best mate all year long. Here we go. The close. The part I dread.
Some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if I ever get back for its root. Root for the party. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Let's get some runs! Get some runs! Get some runs!
What song?
Get some runs!